This is Hannibal from the HannibalTV.com with a daily combat sports news update. And ESPN has put the kibosh on UFC 249. And Dana White has said that pretty much all UFC events are going to be on hold for now because ESPN does not want to move forward with events. Dana White said this was not an issue at all with the event being on the Indian Reserve or the Native Reserve, whatever you want to call it, at the empty casino. The reserve still was willing to go ahead with it, but they have a good relationship with ESPN. If they don't want UFC to go ahead with the show, Dana White's not going to go against them and still air the Fight Pass. For example, he said he's still going to try and get everyone their contracted fights for the year. He doesn't want to lay anyone off. He still hasn't laid anybody off. As far as this Fight Island thing that he's been working on, he says he's still going to go ahead and try and have this island where fighters are going to train and fight and compete. How these fighters are going to get on the island in countries where borders are closed, I don't know, but they are a very rich company, I'm sure. I'm sure exceptions could be what I understand, but wrestlers are still able to work through rich people like Vince McMahon and Tony Khan's contacts. Somehow their wrestlers are still able to travel, literally fight each other, roll around in pretty much no clothes, and get spit, sweat all over each other, but somehow that's still okay. So I don't quite get it. I don't understand that at all. Now, this is strange. NXT beat AEW in viewers last night for the first time since December 19th. So they actually got more viewers than AEW last night, but only 1,000 more. AEW had 692,000 viewers, while NXT had 693,000 viewers. So the interesting thing about it is AEW still won in the ratings. The ratings are the Nielsen number related to the 18 to 49-year-old key demographic. And in actual ratings, AEW won 0.26 to 0.19. So, of course, it was the post-WrestleMania NXT. I heard it was a better show, too. I heard there was a bizarre match on AEW with Kenny Omega teaming with someone against Best Friends, and there was a lot of, groin play and 69 weird stuff and baby oil spots. As I said, I haven't seen it. I just heard that it may not have been that appropriate for a mainstream audience. So maybe that has something to do with people switching channels. I don't know. WWE also has canceled and rescheduled UK events for both May and June. And as I've already reported, Donald Trump is saying that there likely won't be any audience sporting events until August at the earliest. So we'll see when WWE can actually start having shows in front of crowds again. I did do a recap before I get into your questions of the Vice documentary on Brawl for All. I did a recap on that because so many of you asked me to do one earlier today. Check out my own Brawl for All compilation video to get another side of it that includes people that weren't interviewed for Vice, including Dan Severin. And by the way, I forgot to mention this, but in the Vice documentary, they said Dan Severin pulled out of the Brawl for All because he was afraid that he might lose his reputation. But Dan Severin told me that WWE took him out of the Brawl for All. And if you look at Dan Severin's MMA record, he has 101 wins and 19 losses. That is a hell of a lot of MMA fights. That might be a record. But does a guy with 101 wins and 19 losses seem to you to be the type of guy that's out of a prize fighting tournament because he's concerned about his reputation after winning his first match? I personally don't think so. So Vice has some unusual reporting habits for sure. Anthony Shabbat says, how am I? I'm doing great. Ralph Vaquero, everything's getting canceled. Yes. I don't know why. There's still some wrestling companies that keep announcing new dates, but it's like when I first canceled the Great North Wrestling August event, people were looking at me like I was crazy. But what are we seeing now? They keep pushing back things all the time. We don't even know if they're going to allow sporting events in August at this point. So Dark Moon Warriors requesting an Ahmed Johnson interview. I don't know where he is. If someone track him down and put his contact info in the comments, and I will contact him. I was supposed to interview Buff Bagwell this morning, but surprise, surprise, he answered me like 6 or 7 hours later after telling me a time he wanted to do it yesterday and told me we'll set it up later tonight for a future date. So I can maybe get an idea of why some of these major companies didn't like working with him, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. A lot of you guys gave me questions for him. I got 4 pages of questions, so I'm still going to try and get it done. I'm going to try and get an interview with Dan Severin because I want to tell him about what Vice said, that he actually pulled himself out of the Brawl for All tournament. Respond to that because I know that that's not true. Jay Hazard, AEW viewership is dropping. I said this yesterday. Both AEW and NXT viewership is way, way lower than when it started. Both of those companies have lost a lot of interest. And you can say coronavirus, but as I said, people are at home. They have no sporting competitions. They can do other stuff than empty arena matches to make their shows more interesting. I do believe NXT did some type of movie thing last night for one of their matches from what I understand. So that may have also been something that helped them get their first viewership win, not rated, of 2020. Joseph Napolitano says, hoping SummerSlam will have an audience. How do we like this martial law practice run? Sam Lenz says, well, we're practically at martial law. Practically there. I'm not going to comment much, but we don't have much freedom these days. Jay Hazard says they fucked Bart Gunn. I agree they fucked Bart Gunn by putting him against Butterbean. They should have just ran with Bart Gunn at that point in professional wrestling. Everyone believed he was so tough, but instead they had him wrestle fight somebody that had far superior experience to him rather than giving him some easier matches. And not only did it make Bart Gunn look bad, but it made every single person that Bart Gunn was in that tournament with look bad. Do I think eventually WWE will stop caring about Raw and SmackDown due to poor viewership and revenue low? Right now, they're making more TV revenue than ever. So I don't know. Obviously, they're still going to care about their TV revenue. That's what's basically funding their company. ABC, will I interview Mr. Kennedy? The few times I've met him, he seemed like a huge dick. He's not really on the top of my interview list. I do believe David Penzer did an interview with him, possibly, that might be on this channel, though. I don't really recall. Not a fan at all of Mr. Kennedy myself. Big Richard, why would Vice lie about Dan Severn? Why would they lie about Kevin Sullivan in the Benoit documentary? Who knows? It's the way they want to spin their story. It's whatever agenda they have to But as I said, you watch my. I'll put my Brawl for All compilation video at the top of the comments of this video when I'm done, and search it up on here too. Hannibal TV Brawl for All. You'll see Dan Severn explaining that he was taken out of the competition. He didn't like wearing the gloves, but he didn't pull himself out. Eventually, TV money is going to wear out. Mario Alexander says yes, but not for at least like another 4.5 years. And then even then, there'll probably just be a lower TV deal. A couple more questions. Dark Moon Warrior, New Jack interview. Sure, I'd be up for it. Why not? Misfits #1. As far as star power goes, Lex Luger, Alberto Alpatron. By far, Lex Luger. Not even comparable. And I think everyone will agree with me on here. It's not even comparable. Pete Childs, who's the nicest guy I interviewed? Hillbilly Jim. Blue Skies, they could have built Gunn. How can you be pissed when he KO'd all the top guys who couldn't be KO'd? I don't know what you mean. I said I was pissed that Butterbean, they put him against Butterbean after wrestling wrestlers. Butterbean had a lot of boxing experience. They shouldn't have taken Bart Gunn so far against a guy with so much experience after only fighting wrestlers who mostly had no boxing training. They should have either put him against another wrestler on that WrestleMania, maybe a bigger star, or a boxer that he could have beat, or just had him wrestle and forget the whole, just use his Brawl for All win reputation to build him up as a tough guy wrestler instead of ruining his reputation. Big Richard, who's the toughest Canadian wrestler of all time? Without question, Mad Dog Vachon. Without question. Brooke Hogan shoot interview? Yes, sure. If she would do one with me, sure. I would love to. MRF, my compilation videos are far more interesting than today's wrestling. Yes, I put out one yesterday of the Iron Sheik. Working on one now about the Click. Would I interview Rob from the Misfits? I'm not opposed to interviewing any rock stars. Who is the one AEW superstar I would want to interview most? Chris Jericho. Big Richard, I still don't understand why Mark Merrow didn't win the whole thing. Mark Merrow didn't really do too well in the Brawl for All, did he? I don't know about that. Back then, Undertaker would have killed him in the boxing match. I don't know. I've never actually heard of Undertaker getting in any fights. I never heard any stories of Undertaker being in fights. I've heard he's tough and he was a guy that you don't mess with. He had an aura of being tough about him, but I've never heard of any actual physical fight the Undertaker has been in the ring. I am an Undertaker fan, obviously, if you watch my Undertaker compilation video, but if you watch the Undertaker versus Bruiser Brody match from Texas, Brody manhandled him pretty well. Undertaker didn't get a lot of offense in that match. So I don't know how many actual fights he's been in. And I'm not saying he hasn't been in them. I just haven't heard about him. You should get a relative of the late Ray the Crippler Stevens to do an interview. That would be interesting. Would I interview Vampiro? Yes. Do I do my own editing? Yes. Here's one thing I'll say on here. A lot of people will pick on me sometimes because I'll make like a one-letter spelling mistake or whatever. Back when Great North Wrestling had shows before all this, I was promoting, booking, doing all the advertising, all the editing, everything for Great North Wrestling, doing my news updates, doing interviews, working a regular job. Yet people still pick on me for such minor things such as spelling mistakes rather than just telling me about the spelling mistake so I could fix it. A lot of people are rude about it. Speaking of which, I'll tell you one funny thing. Some guy commented the other day, said something to me like, you should smile more in your videos. Take this from a professional. And then I looked at the guy's subscribers, and he had 5,000 subscribers. I have 150,000 and over 100 million views. And this guy's trying to give me advice. Do you guys really want me to put a fake smile and act like I'm all happy all the time, or would you rather me be real? Because I think I'm a fairly real person. Brian says he saw my Nikolai Volkov interview, totally awesome. And that's a guy I liked, and like it saddens me. Like Vader, especially. Vader is the death that hit me the most of the person I interviewed, that I really took his death hard because I really liked him. But going through the clips of the Nikolai interview for the Iron Sheik, it saddens me when I see these guys, but it makes me remember, if I hadn't done that interview with Nikolai Volkov, there's no shoot interviews with him out there. So I am a vital part of wrestling history. Rocky Johnson, I think I'm the only one that ever did a shoot interview with Rocky Johnson.